If you're dealing with thinning hair, excessive shedding, or slow regrowth, the problem may not be your genetics. It could be what you're putting on your scalp every single day. Most shampoos are designed to smell good and foam well, not to support hair follicles. And some ingredients quietly block hair growth, inflame the scalp, and weaken the hair root. Today, I want to show you just 4 shampoos, or more accurately, 4 shampoo types that work with your scalp biology, not against it. When used correctly, these can help create the right environment for natural hair regrowth. Most people don't realize that one of the biggest silent drivers of hair thinning is chronic scalp inflammation, and a major contributor to that inflammation is an overgrowth of yeast and fungus on the scalp. This isn't something you can always see clearly in the mirror, but it shows up as subtle itching, mild flaking, excess soil sensitivity, or a scalp that just never feels calm. When that inflammation stays active, hair follicles shift out of the growth phase much earlier than they should, which leads to gradual thinning over time. Ketoconazole-based shampoo works at a very specific level by reducing this fungal load and calming the inflammatory response around the follicle, which is critical if you want hair to grow normally again. What makes ketoconazole particularly interesting is its indirect effect on DHT activity at the scalp level. DHT is one of the most powerful hormones involved in hair miniaturization, especially around the temples and crown. While ketoconazole is not a hormone blocker in the traditional sense, it reduces the inflammatory environment that amplifies DHT's damaging effects on the follicle. When inflammation drops, the follicle becomes less sensitive to hormonal stress, allowing it to remain thicker and more productive for longer periods of time. That alone can dramatically slow hair shedding in many people. Another key benefit is how this shampoo improves oxygen and nutrient delivery to the hair root. Inflammation restricts blood flow, and restricted blood flow means less oxygen, fewer minerals, and weaker hair shafts. When the scalp environment becomes calmer and cleaner, circulation improves naturally. This allows follicles to receive what they need to stay active in the growth phase instead of prematurely entering the resting phase. Many people notice less hair in the shower within weeks, not because new hair is growing instantly, but because hair loss signals are being turned down. However, this shampoo is not meant to be used daily, and that's a critical detail. Overuse can dry the scalp and disrupt its natural protective oils, which can backfire. The most effective approach is using it 1 to 2 times per week and allowing it to stay on the scalp for at least 2 to 3 minutes before rinsing. This contact time matters because the active compound needs time to interact with the scalp tissue. Using it strategically gives you the benefit without causing irritation. It's also important to understand what this shampoo does not do. It does not force hair to grow. Instead, it removes a major roadblock that prevents growth from happening. Think of it as restoring order to a chaotic environment. Once the scalp becomes stable and balanced, the body's natural repair mechanisms can begin working again. This is why ketoconazole shampoo works best when paired with adequate protein intake, zinc, vitamin D, and stress reduction. Hair follicles are extremely sensitive to internal stress signals, and calming the scalp externally is only part of the equation. What surprises many people is how quickly the scalp itself feels different. Less itching, less tightness, reduced flaking, and a cleaner sensation are all signs that the inflammatory cycle is breaking. When that happens, follicles are no longer under constant attack and hair retention improves. Over time, hair strands may feel thicker, not because there are suddenly more hairs, but because existing follicles are no longer shrinking. When hair loss has been persistent and unexplained, addressing scalp inflammation is often the missing step. Ketoconazole-based shampoo doesn't create miracles, but it creates conditions. And when the conditions are right, the body has a remarkable ability to restore balance, including at the hair follicle level. Hair follicles are among the most metabolically active structures in the body, which means they demand a constant supply of energy to stay in the growth phase. When that energy signal weakens, hair doesn't immediately fall out. It quietly shifts into a resting state, becomes thinner, and grows back slower each cycle. This is where caffeine becomes surprisingly effective. Applied directly to the scalp, caffeine acts as a biological wake-up signal for sluggish follicles that have lost their growth momentum. Caffeine works at the cellular level by increasing cyclic AMP, a compound that tells cells to stay active and productive. In hair follicles, this translates into a longer growth phase and improved resistance to the signals that shut growth down. What's important here is location. Drinking caffeine mainly affects the nervous system, but topical caffeine reaches the follicle directly, bypassing digestion and delivering stimulation exactly where it's needed. This localized effect is why caffeine shampoo can influence hair behavior without affecting the rest of the body. Another critical role caffeine plays is improving microcirculation in the scalp. Hair roots rely on tiny blood vessels to deliver oxygen, amino acids, minerals, and growth signals. Over time, stress, aging, and inflammation reduce that circulation. When blood flow drops, follicles are forced into a conservation mode. Caffeine gently enhances circulation without irritating the scalp, allowing nutrients to reach follicles more efficiently. This improved delivery system is often what people notice first. Hair feels more anchored, shedding slows, and the scalp feels more energized rather than dull or tight. Caffeine also helps counteract one of the most damaging signals to hair follicles' sensitivity to DHT. While it doesn't block hormones directly, caffeine reduces the follicle's overreaction to hormonal stress. In lab studies, hair follicles exposed to caffeine showed increased shaft length and longer growth duration even in the presence of DHT. This doesn't mean caffeine overrides hormones, but it does help follicles maintain strength instead of shrinking under pressure. How caffeine shampoo is used makes a major difference. A quick wash and rinse won't do much. The scalp needs time to absorb the compound, allowing the shampoo to sit for at least 1 minute, preferably 2 dramatically increases its effectiveness. This brief pause gives caffeine time to penetrate the follicular opening and interact with the cells responsible for growth regulation. Consistency matters more than intensity. Regular exposure trains the follicle to stay active. One of the reasons caffeine shampoo is well tolerated is that it doesn't coat the hair or clog pores. Many products that promise thickness simply create buildup, which actually suffocates follicles over time. Caffeine works differently. It communicates with the follicle instead of masking the problem. This is especially useful for people with fine hair, early thinning, or diffuse shedding where heaviness and residue only make things worse. It's also worth noting that caffeine shampoo works best in a low inflammation environment. If the scalp is overly irritated, oily, or flaking, circulation and absorption are impaired. This is why caffeine performs even better when scalp health is addressed first. When the scalp is calm and clean, the follicle becomes far more responsive to stimulation. What many people find encouraging is that the response feels gradual but real. Hair doesn't suddenly sprout overnight, but shedding decreases, texture improves, and regrowth appears more consistent over time. These are signs that follicles are no longer cycling out prematurely. They're staying engaged, active, and productive. Hair growth is not about forcing the body to do something unnatural. It's about restoring energy signals that were lost. Caffeine shampoo does exactly that. It reminds the follicle how to behave like a growth-focused cell again. When energy returns to the root, growth becomes a natural outcome rather than a struggle. One of the most underestimated factors in hair thinning is reduced blood flow combined with local hormonal stress at the scalp level, and this is where rosemary-based shampoo plays a very strategic role. Hair follicles depend on steady circulation to deliver oxygen, amino acids, trace minerals, and signaling molecules that keep the follicle active. When circulation slows, follicles do not die immediately. They gradually shrink, produce thinner strands, and shorten their growth cycles. Rosemary supports circulation in a gentle, non-irritating way, making it especially valuable for long-term scalp support. What makes rosemary unique is that it enhances microcirculation without triggering inflammation. Many stimulating ingredients create a burning or tingling sensation that people mistakenly associate with effectiveness. That irritation actually signals stress to the follicle. Rosemary works differently. It improves blood flow while maintaining a calm scalp environment, which allows follicles to stay in the growth phase longer instead of retreating into a defensive state. Over time, this creates a more favorable environment for thicker, stronger hair shafts. Rosemary also influences how hair follicles respond to hormonal pressure, particularly androgens that accelerate miniaturization. Rather than blocking hormones outright, rosemary helps regulate how intensely the follicle reacts to them. This matters because hair loss is rarely caused by hormone levels alone. It's caused by sensitivity to those hormones at the follicle level. By lowering this sensitivity, rosemary allows follicles to function normally even when hormonal conditions are not ideal. This makes it particularly helpful for age-related thinning and stress-related shedding. Another important aspect is rosemary's antioxidant activity. Hair follicles are exposed to constant oxidative stress from UV radiation, pollution, and metabolic byproducts. Over time, this oxidative burden damages follicular cells and disrupts normal growth signaling. Rosemary contains compounds that neutralize free radicals locally, reducing this stress and preserving the integrity of the follicle. When oxidative stress drops, follicles can allocate more energy toward growth instead of damage control. Consistency is where rosemary-based shampoo truly shines. Its effects are cumulative rather than aggressive. Each use gently reinforces circulation, hormonal balance, and scalp stability, unlike harsh treatments that produce short-term results followed by irritation. Rosemary supports the follicle in a sustainable way. This makes it suitable for frequent use and ideal for people who want gradual improvement without disrupting the scalp's natural barrier. The way rosemary shampoo is applied also matters. Massaging it into the scalp for at least a minute enhances its circulation, boosting effect by mechanically increasing blood flow while allowing the active compounds to interact with the skin. This combination of physical stimulation and biochemical support amplifies results without causing trauma. Over time, this routine trains the scalp to remain well perfused and responsive. Another overlooked benefit is how rosemary improves scalp tone. A healthy scalp is slightly firm, yet flexible, not tight or inflamed. As circulation improves and inflammation decreases, the scalp becomes a better foundation for hair anchoring. Many people notice that hair feels more resilient at the root and less prone to excessive shedding during washing or brushing. This is not cosmetic. It reflects improved follicle stability. Rosemary also pairs well with other supportive strategies because it does not interfere with natural oils or disrupt the microbiome. Instead of stripping the scalp, it preserves balance. This allows follicles to communicate more effectively with the surrounding tissue, which is essential for coordinated growth cycles. When the scalp ecosystem is stable, hair growth becomes more predictable and less vulnerable to setbacks. What's most compelling is that rosemary does not force a response. It creates an environment where the body can respond on its own. Over time, hair texture improves, shedding normalizes, and regrowth appears more consistent. These changes indicate that follicles are no longer under constant stress and are able to operate at their intended capacity. When circulation, hormonal sensitivity, and oxidative stress are addressed together, the follicle regains its ability to produce strong, healthy hair naturally. A large percentage of ongoing hair shedding has very little to do with the hair itself and far more to do with the condition of the scalp environment. Hair follicles are living structures embedded in skin, surrounded by oil glands, microbes, immune cells, and tiny blood vessels. When this environment becomes imbalanced, follicles shift into survival mode. Zinc pyrithian plays a critical role here because it targets multiple scalp stressors at the same time without aggressively stripping or overstimulating the skin. One of the most common hidden problems is excess scalp oil mixed with microbial overgrowth. Sebum by itself is not bad, but when oil production becomes excessive, it traps debris, feeds unwanted bacteria and yeast, and blocks oxygen from reaching the follicle opening. This creates a low oxygen, inflammatory microenvironment that quietly suppresses hair growth. Zinc pyrithian helps regulate oil production and controls microbial imbalance, restoring a cleaner, more breathable scalp surface where follicles can function normally again. What makes zinc pyrithian especially valuable is its ability to calm immune overactivity in the scalp. Many people with chronic shedding don't realize that their immune system is constantly reacting at the follicle level. This reaction doesn't always show up as redness or pain. Sometimes it appears only as increased hair fall or slower regrowth. Zinc pyrithian reduces this low-grade immune irritation, allowing follicles to exit a defensive state and return to normal cycling. When the immune signal quiets down, follicles stop receiving the message to shut down growth. Another major benefit is its impact on dandruff and flaking, which are not just cosmetic issues. Flakes indicate accelerated skin turnover driven by irritation and microbial imbalance. When this process happens around hair follicles, it interferes with normal hair anchoring and growth signaling. Zinc pyrithian normalizes skin cell turnover, creating a smoother, more stable scalp surface. As the scalp becomes more uniform and less reactive, hair follicles experience less mechanical and biochemical stress. Zinc itself is also a key trace mineral for hair follicle function. While topical zinc is not a replacement for dietary intake, its presence at the scalp supports local enzymatic activity involved in tissue repair and protein synthesis. Hair is made primarily of keratin, and zinc-dependent enzymes are essential for keratin production. By improving local zinc availability and reducing competing inflammatory processes, this shampoo supports stronger hair fiber formation over time. There is also an important relationship between scalp microbes and hair cycle regulation. Certain yeast species release byproducts that directly interfere with follicular signaling, pushing hairs prematurely into the resting phase. Zinc pyrithian suppresses these organisms without completely sterilizing the scalp. This balance matters because a healthy scalp microbiome protects against irritation while still allowing normal skin function. When microbial balance is restored, follicles receive clearer growth signals instead of constant stress cues. Usage technique makes a significant difference in results. Zinc pyrithian shampoo should be applied primarily to the scalp, not the hair length, and gently massaged in to ensure even distribution. Allowing it to remain on the scalp for 1 to 2 minutes improves its interaction with the skin and follicle openings. Rushing this step limits its effectiveness. When used consistently, this approach gradually retrains the scalp to remain stable instead of reactive. Another overlooked advantage is how zinc pyrithian improves scalp resilience. A resilient scalp adapts better to environmental stressors like heat, sweat pollution, and styling products. When resilience improves, temporary stressors are less likely to trigger shedding episodes. Many people notice fewer seasonal or stress-related hair loss flares once scalp balance is restored. This is not coincidence. It reflects improved regulatory control at the skin level. It's important to understand that zinc pyrithium does not stimulate follicles aggressively. Instead, it removes chronic irritants that drain follicular energy. Hair growth is an energy-demanding process, and when follicles are forced to constantly defend against microbes, oil imbalance, and immune irritation, they divert energy away from growth. Once these drains are reduced, follicles can reallocate resources back to producing hair. Over time, the scalp begins to feel different, less itchiness, reduced oiliness, fewer flakes, and a cleaner sensation are early signs that the environment is improving. As weeks pass, shedding often decreases and hair feels more stable at the root. These changes indicate that follicles are no longer being pushed into early shutdown. They are operating in a calmer, more predictable growth cycle. This approach is especially valuable for people who have tried growth stimulants without success. Stimulating a follicle that is inflamed, clogged, or under immune attack rarely produces lasting results. Addressing the scalp environment first changes how follicles respond to everything else. Zinc pyrithium creates that foundational stability by controlling microbes, regulating oil, calming immune signals, and supporting repair processes simultaneously. When the scalp shifts from chaotic to controlled, hair follicles no longer need to retreat. They respond not to force, but to balance. And once balance is restored, consistent, healthier hair growth becomes a natural outcome of a scalp that is finally working with the body instead of against it. One of the biggest reasons people feel disappointed with hair regrowth products is because they expect a single shampoo to override biology. Hair growth does not work that way. Hair follicles respond to conditions, not force. When the internal and external environments are aligned, follicles naturally shift into a productive growth cycle. The real power of these shampoos appears when they are used with intention, timing, and awareness of how the scalp functions as a living system. Rotation is critical. Using the same shampoo every day, even a beneficial one, can desensitize the scalp or create imbalance. Each of these shampoos addresses a different limiting factor: inflammation, circulation, hormonal sensitivity, microbial load, and oil regulation. When rotated properly, they prevent dominance of any single stressor. This keeps the scalp adaptable rather than reactive. Hair follicles thrive in adaptable environments because adaptability signals safety and safety signals growth. Another overlooked factor is contact time. Most people apply shampoo, scrub briefly, and rinse immediately. That routine is designed for cleaning hair, not supporting follicles. The scalp needs time to interact with active compounds. Leaving shampoo on the scalp for even 1 to 2 minutes dramatically increases its effectiveness. This pause allows ingredients to reach follicular openings and communicate with the cells responsible for growth regulation. Rushing this step is one of the most common reasons results stall. Equally important is avoiding what silently cancels progress. Harsh sulfates, heavy fragrances, and alcohol-based products strip the scalp's protective barrier. When that barrier is damaged, the scalp becomes inflamed and overly sensitive, even if the shampoo claims to promote growth. A compromised barrier tells follicles that the environment is hostile. In response, follicles conserve energy and shorten their growth phase. Supporting hair growth means protecting the scalp, not constantly challenging it. Internal nutrition plays a quiet but decisive role. Hair follicles are protein-demanding structures. Without adequate amino acids, minerals, and fat, soluble vitamins, even the best topical routine produces limited results. Zinc, iron, biotin, iodine, vitamin D, and sufficient protein intake all influence follicle output. When these are deficient, follicles downshift. When they are adequate, topical strategies suddenly become far more effective. The scalp is not separate from the body. It reflects systemic signals. Stress regulation is another piece people underestimate. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which directly interferes with hair cycling. High cortisol pushes hair into the resting phase prematurely. Even with perfect scalp care, ongoing stress sends conflicting signals to follicles. Supporting sleep quality, stabilizing blood sugar, and avoiding excessive stimulants help lower this hormonal interference. When stress hormones settle, follicles regain permission to grow. Mechanical handling also matters. Aggressive brushing, tight hairstyles, and constant friction strain follicles that are already vulnerable. When the scalp environment is improving, follicles become more responsive but also more sensitive. Gentle handling protects gains that are being made beneath the surface. Hair regrowth is often lost not because follicles fail, but because they are repeatedly traumatized during recovery. Consistency without obsession is the balance point. Hair cycles operate on months, not days. Early improvements show up as reduced shedding, improved texture, and better scalp comfort. These changes indicate progress even before visible regrowth appears. When people chase rapid results, they often overwash, or switch products too frequently. That instability confuses follicular signaling. A steady, patient approach produces stronger long-term outcomes. Another powerful indicator of success is scalp sensation. A calm scalp is not numb or tight, it feels neutral. When itching, burning, and oiliness decrease, follicles are no longer under attack. This neutral state allows growth signals to dominate instead of defensive ones. Many people misinterpret the absence of sensation as inactivity when in reality it signals balance. What ultimately determines success is alignment. When inflammation is reduced, circulation is supported, microbes are controlled, hormones are balanced locally, nutrition is adequate, and stress is managed, hair growth becomes the default outcome. No single product creates this shift. It emerges from cooperation between biology and routine. Hair follicles are not broken, they are responsive. When the environment improves, they respond accordingly. Supporting that environment consistently allows hair to grow not because it is forced to, but because nothing is standing in its way anymore. The success of hair regrowth depends less on chasing miracle solutions and more on creating the right environment for follicles to function optimally. Each shampoo discussed addresses a specific limiting factor, whether it's inflammation, circulation, hormonal sensitivity, microbial balance, or oil regulation, but none work in isolation. When used strategically and consistently, they remove the obstacles that silently prevent follicles from performing at their best. The follicles themselves are remarkably responsive. They do not need aggressive stimulation, only a stable, supportive environment where energy can be directed toward growth rather than defense. Small, cumulative improvements in scalp health, less irritation, better blood flow, balanced oil, and controlled microbial activity signal to follicles that conditions are safe for prolonged growth phases. Over time, these subtle shifts compound, resulting in stronger strands, reduced shedding, and more consistent regrowth. This approach highlights that hair growth is a process of restoration and balance. Supporting follicles in this way respects the natural biology of hair while leveraging targeted interventions to maximize outcomes. When the scalp environment is optimized, follicles regain the ability to perform their natural function and hair growth becomes a predictable and sustainable process.